All right, everybody, we are live, and sorry about that screen. I had to remove it, but I forgot in time. But anyways, welcome to you all. Hope everybody is doing well, and hope Madan is doing well as well. Hello, Madan. Welcome to Philo Sapiens, where religion meets reason. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, and apologies to anybody who's just saw that flash that we are streaming. So this was kind of an impromptu stream. In some sense, we decided, okay, we we were thinking of doing a stream past few days, but none of us was finding time. So today we found time and said within 15 minutes within 10 minutes we have to set up and stream. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna make the link public, and this is, as you can see, this is an open stream. Anybody can join and have a conversation. And what we do is we have really extremely cordial conversation with anyone who wants to talk, tell us about their belief system, their worldview, counter our arguments, may put forth their strongest arguments, or even the whatever they consider to be strongest, or even the weak arguments they want to put forth, they can do that and see if we can find holes, poke holes in it, or if they have their own arguments that poke holes in some of our arguments, or videos or video clips, or whatever you may have, are welcome to join. And you don't have to be particularly a Muslim. You can be a Christian, a Jew, or a Hindu, or whatever. Come and have a conversation with us. In the meanwhile, before anybody joins, we'll have a few short clips that we'll review. And so, unless Madan has anything else to say, we're gonna, jump straight away into it. Madan, do you have anything
No,
to
no,
add?
no. Let's just jump into it. Let's jump into it.
All right. So this is I think Speaker's Corner, the voice short, and the title is Atheist Claims Allah Made Mistakes. Let's listen to this short clip and see what Muhammad Ali has to say.
Was a creator, then obviously he made a lot of mistakes.
Which mistake?
Poverty.
Poverty is the creator's mistake? How did you, as a human being, do you have greed? So
Yeah,
I mean, okay, so it's very common that person can take the money for himself because of his greed. How is that on the creator? How did you put that problem on the creator when it's the individual problem that kept the resources for himself? Like, for example, Islam has zakat. Zakat is a 2.5% of your wealth that you have to give if you're a rich person to the poor. It's obligatory. If that law is applied within reality, there will be no poverty. And the creator commanded us to apply that law, but we're not applying that law. So we cannot blame the creator for poverty's existence. The creator commands you to be charitable. This is the obligatory charity, but the creator commands you to give money as well. And Muslims are the most charitable community in the UK. So we are charitable because we follow our scripture. So we help remove this idea of poverty. The creator is removing poverty, is not putting poverty. So I cannot blame the creator for poverty when it is an individual human mistake.
All right. So, Madan, right off the bat,
Before you proceed, we do have a comment. If you want to invite this person on, because we are opening the stream, etc.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we have a comment from Jomi Yoko. The name sounds pretty Japanese to me, but I'm not gonna say whether I'm sure or not. But Jomi Yoko, if you want, you can join the stream and have a conversation. And if you want to ask that question straight after coming on the stream, maybe we can even have a conversation about it. And if not, maybe we'll tackle fine-tuning arguments at some other time. But I think we have on and off talked about this fine-tuning argument and whether it it really makes sense scientifically, or even logically or philosophically, basically. And at least on this channel, our consensus is that it's a very sketchy argument. At least that's my opinion, particular, that it's a very sketchy argument. It is well-structured argument, given that it follows the rules of a well-structured argument. It takes science into account and all those things, perfectly fine. But I think I find a lot of holes in it, basically. And if you want to join, maybe we can talk about it. Madan, you want to respond to it from your side? Okay. All right. So right off the bat, I think what we heard from Muhammad Ali, his claim is that we give. I'm going to hold on to a specific point here about the zakat, basically, right? And zakat is 2.5%, and I said this is the best solution for world to eradicate poverty. Maybe I misread what he said basically, or misheard what he said basically, and I'm paraphrasing it. I'm just taking the inference from him. If that were the case, there would be no Muslim nation where poverty wouldn't have existed. I mean, right? That would be my answer, right, to him. And this is so absurd. I think 2.5% is not going to solve poverty in any nation. I think there have to be drastic measures somewhere or the other. You have to do in my opinion, you have to do the population control. You have to do a lot of policy making, policy from the. Your politicians have to be not corrupt to let that money that's even being collected through charities go to the needy people and all those things. A lot of things have to happen. I think this is a vast topic to discuss right now, but there are so many parameters in making eradicating poverty that I think this solution that he suggested doesn't fit in that, at least in my book, basically. Martin,
Yeah, I mean, right. So the question by the speaker, the atheist or the agnostic, I'm not sure what his stance is the other man who's questioning
Muhammad Ali.
Yeah. Sorry?
Yeah, no, I'm saying, I thought you said Muhammad Ali. Who's questioning Muhammad Ali, right?
Yeah. The person who's questioning Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, his name is not out there, I think.
Yeah. He's asking obviously the question of whether or not why, if there is a God, is there poverty? And Muhammad Ali is responding by saying that the solution for poverty has been encoded or has been designed into the Quran or something like that, and the reason for poverty is therefore a human error or human beings being not implementing the message soundly and properly, and we can eradicate poverty if we implemented it. So it's not the blame upon the creator. And I think that misses entirely the point, because he's asking why is there poverty in the first place, right? So why would God create a world? It's a problem of evil argument in its essence, the strongest version of it. And why would God with those attributes, mercy, compassion, etc., justice, create a world right from the get-go, right from the beginning, that allows poverty, that needs to be solved, right? So that doesn't fit comfortably with God's attributes. So it doesn't matter whether or not, think about it this way. Imagine a perfectly loving mother who she has superpowers, and she's perfectly loving. She's not just a little bit loving, she's all perfectly loving, etc. And she's compassionate and just, right? And then she sees 50 people suffering, and she's got all the power to solve it, right? And because she's perfectly loving and she's all powerful, right? Would she now, for example, then just command one person to do X, Y, Z to solve it? Well, it kind of strains the concept of a perfectly loving, perfectly compassionate, perfectly merciful, perfectly just being, or that's a mother that's walking around like a fairy godmother or whatever you want to call it, right? Who just doesn't do anything about it, but just kind of appeals to a vague tax policy. Well, she doesn't need a tax policy. She can just wave her wand and eradicate and eliminate the poverty, right? Or save the 50 people, whatever it is, right? Because if what else do we mean by perfectness here, right? So it doesn't make a lot of sense to do it like that. So right from the get-go, it doesn't make sense to create the poverty for it to be solved, right? With some sort of or tax code or something like that, right? Think of it in another way. Imagine now you have this perfect mother, and the perfect mother is creating children, and the perfect mother who's creating children, right, creates them with disabilities, in poverty, in various conditions that cause a lot of suffering, and then says, for example, in order to alleviate this suffering, you have to implement XYZ tax code. You know, it's like some charity. You know, as a tax that you appropriate for justifiably through the legal system from various people, and then you can solve it. Again, that doesn't fit comfortably. The easy question, the response to that would be, wait a minute, didn't this perfectly loving mother create the situation in the first place? Why would the perfectly loving mother create all these kids and then command them to be, you know, command the suffering to be solved through all these kind of tax codes, right? So it's a bit like that. It's you know, and you can think of various other situations where, you know, a kid is about to fall off the roof, a roof, and you have Superman there. Superman can fly instantaneously and save the people. But instead, Superman says to everyone else, you can save them by doing X, Y, Z. And Superman just sits back. Yeah?
Right.
It doesn't, it constrains in all of these situations. Every commonsensical response would be, why doesn't, you know, the perfectly loving mother just not do, you know, not create it in the first place or solve it herself? Why doesn't Superman just go and rescue the children? So it's a completely intuitive thing when we add the attributes of perfection, justice, mercy, you know, etc.
Right. One of the response, Mahadan, to that kind of an argument from theists would be that this is some kind of a theodicy, basically, right? In a sense that there is some kind of soul building happening over here. The creator wants his creation, his or her, whatever creation, to have the soul building done and come up with solutions on their own. That's why he created all these poverty, evils, kind of, you know, within the human beings, basically, right? So that they can cooperate with each other and then support each other, give charity, and earn the rewards, basically, right? And so that they can get greater and greater rewards for the greater goods in the afterlife, pretty much, right? So that kind of would be the one of the responses in to the thing that you have posed, basically.
Yeah. So when you talk about theodicy, you have to do a few things. Then you have to justify it through an empirical argument, right? You can't simply assume there is a theodicy that's happening. For example, if you say that poverty or suffering or whatever it is generates and builds souls, etc., you have to show, for example, through the data that this happens in masse, overall in the population, etc. And we have several. It'll strain common sense and the empirical data to suggest that we actually do have that, right? We have plenty of situations where through poverty, there's people who are dying in silence and there's no souls being built, right? Or if there is some sort of positive out and net effect, it's not obvious that it leads people to greater heroic or positive attributes. Rather, it can go down to a spiral of chaos, depression, suicide, despair, etc. So the empirical data is lacking for that, right? When you look around the world, there's plenty of people dying in complete helplessness, and there's no obvious positive evidence of soul building theodicies going through the empirical work.
Right.
One, that's the first contention.
There is another bigger problem for this, Martin. Go ahead and
that's the first contention in the sense that there is no empirical basis for this kind of. It doesn't have to just be soul building. It could be any net positive greater good. Right?
And what I'm saying,
and there's no obvious all over the world kind of evidence of distribution of net positive greater goods arising from the suffering of people, right? And it doesn't matter if you can show one or two instances of it, because then we could say, here's a good example of, you know, some sort of tragedy that happened and something actually getting better in the world as a result of it. Fine, that's one instance. But given that we have such a mass population, given that we have humans who've existed for so long, it strains common sense to say that all the time when there is this suffering, there's always a net benefit, right? And so all we need is one instance of there not being an obvious net benefit for the theodicy to fail. I would argue. Maybe that's a bit too high of a standard, or low, however you want to see it. But there's plenty of suffering. For example, there's no obvious net greater good. That's my first contention. You need to empirically justify it. You can't just claim that this is happening. The second issue is whether or not it's necessary for a God to do that. Right? Again, so when you argue the theodicy, you have to show that it's necessary for a God to do it like that. So if you imagine there's a dentist, and the dentist is to alleviate some suffering, right? You may do a root canal, which is necessary suffering, in order to stop the prolonged greater pain that it would ensue if you don't intervene. So ultimately, the necessary suffering of drilling into somebody's teeth is a requirement in order to stop prolonged suffering. So there's a greater good that comes along from the drilling into somebody's teeth, like a root canal that will stop and interrupt a greater form of suffering and lead to an eventual greater good. Another example might be heart surgery, right? We need to obviously open up the heart, etc., and inflict some necessary suffering in order to stop some worse suffering, or impact generate some greater good, right? Because it's absolutely necessary to do that. Well, in the context, imagine if the dentist or the surgeon had infinite resources, right? If the dentist or the surgeon had infinite resources, and let's say there was this drug in order to avoid the root canal, avoid the transient and temporary suffering in order to bring about the greater good, it would be absurd for a good, perfect dentist to do that, right? Why undergo surgery in order to bring about that good end when you can bring it about directly? Especially if you're a good, perfect dentist, right? Don't undergo the surgery, etc. So on those two things, for one, the empirical nature of it, the empirical facts which fall short, and then the second one, which is that it's not absolutely necessary for a God to bring about the good end by implementing a theodicy.
Right. Another big problem that I was thinking here is, when do you say something is a soul building thing? When do you intervene, basically, right? Here's this example. I think this is a very famous example. A kid is drowning in a pond in a remote village where you're walking past, basically, right? And you see this kid drowning. There's nobody else, right? You have the power to save that kid, basically, right? But now if you start rationalizing this, is this something for soul building? Why should I intervene in God's plan, basically, here, right? If I intervene, am I ruining God's plan, basically? When does a person really realize that if I intervene, that's going to be according to God's plan, or it's going to be against God's plan, basically, right? So in this case as well, his own example is refuted by himself. When God has created this suffering, even through poverty, let's say, why should anybody go and give zakat and do charity to uplift them, basically? I'm pretty sure if nobody gives any money and they suffer a lot more than what they have already been suffering, they're going to get more rewards for it. And then their souls are going to be, built to even a higher level, right? So that's the biggest problem I
Hello,
see.
Before we do anything,
philosapiens.
Waqas, I think it'll be
Waqas,
better.
hold on.
I think it'll be better for
Actually,
you. Hold on a minute.
I have
Waqas.
yes.
Waqas, hold on.
Yeah.
See, that's one of the issues, that you have to let others finish and then start, right?
Yeah,
Madhu, finish your point.
Waqas, I think it will be better if you turn up to our Urdu stream.
Actually, I just want to come here and then I will go because I have an urgent piece of work. I want to say, my dear brothers, you have first of all,
Waqas.
I am just giving you two arguments. Maybe you can critically think on that.
Waqas. Because I'm saying to you, it better if you want to make those arguments on our Urdu stream, because this is an English stream.
But I can give you two arguments. Maybe it will give you a good
No, the reason I'm saying
sense.
so, I'm saying so based on previous.
If you are a seeker, then I think you have no problem with my arguments. But if you want to inject something else,
Okay,
then I don't know.
Waqas, hold on. Let me talk to Madan.
No, so
Madan, you want to? Do you think we can give him 5 minutes?
No, the reason is, given how our interactions have been in the past on English streams, I think there's a massive disconnect between what we're saying and what Waqas is understanding, right? So without disrespect, it's not his fault, of course. I can't speak any Urdu. He can speak better English than I can speak Urdu. But because there's a language barrier, I think it's the interest of everybody, yeah, that if Waqas has an argument, save it for the Urdu.
All right. Yeah, I agree.
In a language
Waqas,
that he's comfortable, then you guys can in detail examine it. It's not about an issue about
sure. I agree. Waqas, yeah.
Philo, so what about your Urdu stream when you will make a stream about hell and paradise?
We'll talk about it. All right, you join our Hindi Urdu streams, right? Next time, and we'll take you in, right? Okay.
Okay, bye.
All right, Lucas. Yeah, no disrespect from any one of us to Lucas, but
no, I think it's best for the audience, best for us, best for everybody.
Yeah.
One of the primary problems that we've had with Waqas is that he's quite passionate about what he's saying in general, anyway. But in addition to that, there's a massive language barrier. And I don't think it's the most productive conversation it's not a very good productive conversation to have when you have those language barriers. So it's better for him to express himself in a language that he feels comfortable.
All right, he's saying my two arguments I'm mentioning here. Waqas, let's see if we can address those, or maybe if not, then some other time you can come on our Hindi Urdu streams and we can tackle them over there, right? All right. So, Madan, yeah, I think we pointed out 3 problems with this argument, basically, right? What Muhammad Ali is talking about there.
Yeah. So when it comes to the problem of evil, you do need to justify your theodicies by demonstrating that it's empirically one, true, that it's necessary for that being to do so. There is a third additional aspect, which is proportionality. Is it proportionate? So whatever theodicy you think about, for example, let's say that there's some sort of greater good that happens from it. Again, you have to show that there is a greater good. You can't just say that there's a possible greater good because a possibility is a possibility, right? If you can't show a greater good, let's say the Holocaust, what's the greater good, right? It's hard to say that there was a greater good. Even if you can show that there was a greater good, maybe it led to the Genocide Convention, maybe the United Declaration of Human Rights, maybe it led to a stampede against many different wars, etc. You can talk about all these things. Again, then you have to show that it was absolutely necessary for God to introduce those greater goods through that means, through Holocaust, right? And then even if you show that it's absolutely necessary for God to do it that way, then you have to show whether or not it was justified or proportionate, right? Let's think about it in a finer context, in a smaller context. Let's say a woman gets raped, and from that woman being raped, the sister and the brother of the woman become a lot more compassionate as a result, right? Again, it doesn't seem like the case. It seemed to be the case that everybody who gets raped has family members whose souls are built. It doesn't, right? But let's grant it for a minute that their souls are built. And then you have to ask, was it absolutely necessary? Could God just build their souls, build them the souls that have been built right from the beginning?
Yeah, I totally agree.
No. But then let's just grant for a minute that God had to do that. God had to allow the rape to occur so that the brothers and sisters' souls can be built. But was the suffering inflicted by that rape? Is it outbalanced by the goods that were generated thereof? No.
Yeah, I
You know,
think
is it
I think
justified? Is
it's
it
a
proportionate?
you have to, as you pointed out, Madan,
Mhm.
just to clarify it, you have to take two-pronged approach, whether it was absolutely necessary and
Mhm.
whether the outcomes will be justified or will
Exactly.
outweigh the suffering. Basically, that's
Exactly.
the two-pronged
Yeah.
kind of
Sure, the
approach.
brother and the sister might become a bit more courageous people, but is building a bit of courage or a bit of compassion does that outweigh the horrific, horrendous, sinister rape that she had to go through? Doesn't seem like it, right? So so all of these considerations make you think, like God could have just, think about it. Why do you need courage? Why do you need bravery? Why do you need heroism? To stop further evil, which God again created, again, which was not necessary. Courage. So these things like courage and bravery are contingent personality aspects that only make sense in a world of suffering that didn't have to be there in the first place. So it kind of becomes
Right,
almost
Madan.
circular because it begs the question, right? You need
Right, right,
suffering to stop more suffering. But the point
exactly.
is, why should there be a framework of suffering in the first place? You need suffering so that you can have bravery, so you can stop more suffering. But if
Right,
God didn't have to create the suffering in the first place, you don't need the bravery in the first place.
right, right.
You see that? So so the question of
Right,
I mean you
Madan,
kind of oh, sorry.
just stopping you for a second to ask the audience as well as you. Have you heard of this girl named Junko Furuta, the Japanese girl? Have you heard, Madan? No, right? I'm assuming no.
Yes,
This
I think I have. I think I have.
Right. So she suffered horrifically. I think this is like one of the most horrific incidences that you can hear. And this is not probably just one-off incident. I'm pretty sure there are other incidences like this one. And anybody who's faint of heart guy should not type her name and what happened to her and the agony she went through. And if there is a God and has a plan for her, for that suffering, that amount of suffering, I'm not quite. I'm just giving an example here, right? Everybody's soul would be shuddered pretty much, listening to her story, right? So yeah, I mean that's. I just wanted to put that out there, basically, right? And this is not
Yeah,
just one incident. I think in history there have been quite a few other incidents. There
absolutely.
has been a
No,
movie as well. There
yeah.
has been a movie on this as well, by the
Mm.
way, and
This is
there was a novel based on her story as well, pretty much.
Yes, absolutely. I mean,
So
this is why the problem of suffering or the problem of evil is far more pronounced in contexts where these theodicies seem inapplicable or highly unlikely to be applicable. For example, let's talk about animal suffering, for example, where there isn't any soul building theodicy because there isn't any souls, there isn't any obvious sign of any paradise or a heaven that they might go to, right? There isn't any free will that is that gets nourished for the animals because the animals don't have the free will, for example, etc. And so on. And there's no obvious greater good, especially animals that for humankind, especially animals that existed prior to humankind, right? Who have been suffering through predation and malnourishment and famines and etc., and just injuries and starvation, etc. Right? So if you imagine, let's say, a deer being killed in the bush, outside of the sight of any human being, etc. You can't invoke the soul building theodicy easily. You can't invoke the
exactly.
heaven and hell theodicy. There isn't any of those things, and therefore it seems highly abhorrent or uncomfortably. It doesn't fit well with the God's compassionate and just nature or merciful nature to create those conditions in the
Right,
first place.
right. I mean, these are evidences against a just God, basically. Us, very what do you call Bayesian on a Bayesian probability, they rank really high up actually. To
Yeah.
make a case against a just and compassionate God, basically.
And let me just
Anyway,
say, you can't,
we have
Yeah, before you go, and let me just say, there's a three-pronged test, right? You need to show evidence for the theodicy. You have to show necessity for the theodicy, right? You have to show proportionality or justification for the theodicy. So in the case of the animals, again, you may just conjure up a possibility. For example, maybe the animal that's been dying in the bush, it has a net positive effect on something, right? Maybe there is a heaven which it will go to, but we don't have empirical evidence of that, right? We assess the problem, the incompatibility of this being with the world based on the current evidence, not based on possibilities, right? Just like we assess something in a court case. For example, if a defendant in a criminal case suggests, for example, I murdered this person, but I do have a justification, right? There's a possible justification, but he can't evidence it, right? He doesn't prove it. Then him saying that it might be something discovered 50 years from down the line won't be enough to let him go free. We'll say, well, if in the future we come across the justification, the evidence that shows that in fact that you are justified to murder this person, then we will release you from prison. Until and unless that happens, you're going to go to jail, because we judge things based on the current evidence. So you can't simply say, for example, God knows more, and God might have a possible unknown reason for the animal suffering.
Right. Martin,
Right?
we have Freddie here, right? Okay. Hello, Freddie. How are you?
Hello, how are you? Thank you for the invite.
Yeah. Apologies, you had to wait, but we were in the middle
No
of
worries. No
yeah.
worries.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I was sick for this past week, but I'm getting better. So, how are you
All
guys
right.
doing?
Great. Yeah. Busy as always, but finding time here and there to stream once in a while, basically, right? So today
Yeah,
was the lucky day. I think we decided within like, it was an impromptu stream in some sense. Madin asked me, shall we stream? We were on a call and he said, shall we stream? And I said, okay, let's do it. And we have been trying to do a stream past 3-4 days or so. Anyway,
yeah,
what do you want to?
yeah. I hadn't gone live myself, and because like I said, I was sick, and I thought, you know what, I'm feeling better. I'm gonna go and set up to go live on my own channel, and then when I clicked on my YouTube, I saw you guys were live. I said, okay, let me go check you out and see what's going on. So, no, I don't really have
All right.
anything other than if you had any questions, you know that I'm a
Right.
Christian.
How do you solve the problem of evil?
Of free will.
Hmm. Oh, sorry, a problem of evil,
Oh, of
as
evil.
in, yeah.
Well, I don't believe there is a solution for evil as far as man. We just have to do right. Evil is going to be eliminated when remember now, I'm a Christian and I believe according to my belief. So when Jesus returns at the last day, for Judgment Day, then that the evil and death will be over. Satan will be cast into the lake of fire to be destroyed, and that will be it. Judgment Day for the unbelievers, for those that rejected Jesus, rejected the one true God. Evil will be over, death will be over, and the eternal kingdom of God, the new age, the new world will begin, and it will be forever without sin, without transgression, without murder, evil, any of that, like it was supposed to have been when God first created Adam.
I think one of the problems that Madin and I have been exposing or talking about a lot in this stream as well as in other streams as well is the ontological problem of evil, pretty much, right? And to me, it seems like I think, I don't know, this would be like the 1,000th time that I'll be saying, and Madin will be saying that it is basically at odds with all good, all powerful, and compassionate, all what do you call all compassionate God, basically, right? So that's the problem. you shouldn't be seeing that suffering here. And the cases that Madin has exposed, the deer who's stranded under a tree that has fallen over him or her, basically a fool, right? And he's suffering in agony for days and days while the predators come and pick flesh out of that foal alive. And the kind of suffering that buffaloes go through when Komodo dragons just bite them to let them suffer for months on, basically, right? So this is the kind of this, and none of your soul building theodicies work on these examples because these are non-human animals, basically,
Not
right?
just not just soul building, but a lot of the theodicies. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the yeah. I mean, my bad, misspoke. None of the theodicies work on them. Basically, that's the case.
None of the what? I'm struggling to understand, or a word you said. None of the what?
None of the theodicies.
Yes, theodicy. So a theodicy is basically a defense of how we can reconcile the suffering or the evil with a good, loving God, right? So that's what a theodicy is. So the problem of evil is basically an argument against the existence of God, and it commands or demands an explanation, right? And
Yeah, where do
theodicy.
you? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, theologians and philosophers or theists have devised many different explanations to explain away or render it compatible, reconcilable with one of the theisms or one of many of the theisms. For example, let me just give you an example of a theodicy. So an atheist may go, why, the existence of a child being raped, let's say, is incompatible with a good and loving God. Therefore, a good and loving God doesn't exist. Whereas a theist may respond in defense of, let's say, Christian theology or whatever theology, by using a theodicy like the following. That girl who was raped, right? God allowed it to happen. It is compatible with a good, loving, merciful, benevolent being. He allowed it to happen for a greater good. Therefore, there's no inconsistency between a loving God and goodness, because he brings about overall goodness, net goodness, from that suffering of that child. So that innocent child who was raped, right? Ultimately, the rape was something that he allowed so that he can bring about other goods in the world. Let's say heroism, or building somebody's character, or maybe some other net positive thing. Maybe the governments or society learns from this, so they end up strengthening their laws and improving the world as a result. So that's like a theodicy.
Can you see Freddie? Can you see the definition? I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure you have come
Yeah.
across the word, right?
Yes, I just couldn't hear the pronunciation that well. So I understand. Yeah, I get it. But all I can say in my humble, simple mind is this is man trying to explain something God has created, on a biblical point of view. God created angels. Satan is an angel, and he transgressed. He disobeyed God, and so he was cast out of the heavens with the other angels and to earth. So when God created man, Adam and Eve, we see that, as you probably know, that the commandment was that they could eat of every fruit of every tree except one, not to eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So there was no evil up to that point on the earth with mankind. But when Adam ate of it, even though he ate it after Eve, that's when the evil was brought in, the sin, the transgression, death. So God gave man a free will choice. This is the one commandment, not to eat of it. The day that you eat of it, you shall surely die. So that's what was the consequence, was you're going to die. And then we know that they had sons, and Cain slew his brother, and so murder was brought in.
Yeah.
Okay,
Freddie,
so
yeah, that's. I think we're going a
yeah, but
slight bit
I'm
on
just
a
trying
tangent.
to right. But
Yeah,
the
that's slight
scripture
bit going
says
on a tangent.
God's
Yeah,
thoughts are not our thoughts. His ways are not our ways. I'm just
yeah,
trying to give
and
you a little synopsis
yeah, yeah,
of where I'm coming from.
yeah.
That this is philosophical stuff, and philosophy isn't going to explain God. See, this is man trying to explain God. Man that doesn't believe in God, and they're trying to. Well, how can a loving God allow all this? Well, God created, man made a choice, and man is doing evil. So man can stop it. Man is doing all this, not God. God didn't create the evil. God created man to have free will choice. Now people are doing evil. Even people that do evil, they still do good to their own, to the people they love and care for. But good people shouldn't do evil. All people should not do evil. It should be inherent within us to do good. And if you see somebody suffering, you should go help. You shouldn't, oh, that I don't know that person, or that person's of this ethnicity, and I don't
Or
like these kind of,
Freddie, let us respond, right?
yeah.
No,
Yeah,
that's all right.
I think yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
I was
Madan.
just.
You were saying.
Well, I think we do get your point. So forgive us for cutting you short.
No worries, no worries.
We do understand the point that you're making, and we do have a little, time constraints as well. So we're just trying to get it, etc. But my question to you would be, because you said, for example, man, for example, made a decision to commit the evil. My question would be to you is, why did God allow that to happen in the first place? For example, you're talking about a loving and just God, right? Now, my understanding is that if God is perfect, he could have easily skipped all of that and created a loving and just world. In fact, that's what he should be doing, right? He ought to be doing, because he's loving and just. He could create a
I
world
mean,
with,
that's by definition all loving and
yeah,
all just.
a heaven-like world already. So why would God, for example, create fallible beings, allowing some of them to become malevolent and causing horrific suffering, almost like a test, right? Almost like a cruel experiment, like a mad scientist almost. Because that's what you expect from a mad scientist, not from a perfectly loving God who can straightforwardly create all of these good things in one go. But instead, he kind of just creates imperfect beings to inflict cruelty upon each other, right? And furthermore, even after doing it, he allows it to continually happen, right? When he could have stopped it. Yeah, the same thought experiment, when we apply it to any other situation, let's say a policeman watching, right? You'd think if you're a policeman with a badge of justice on their uniform, like, why don't you just go and stop the crime? Why are you allowing it to happen? Let alone if the policeman creates the crime in the first place and then says, stop it, please, right? He creates the crime. And when I say creates the crime, I mean creates the people foreseeing that they're going to commit the crimes and then telling them to stop the crime. When
Why don't what see that's why don't people address this? Why don't they go to the people that are doing the crime or that are doing evil? See, that's my point I was trying to get across. You guys, when I say you guys, people thinking like this is the whole point. You're trying to put a constraint on God, this almighty loving God, but yet God gave man free will. That's all I'm trying to say. Free will.
No,
Man can do good or man can do evil, and it's man that's doing
My
evil.
question
And
is
those
why?
that are doing
it,
good should do more
Freddie,
good.
Yeah, my question is,
Madan's question
yeah.
is one step above your question. Basically, the ontology of the problem of evil. Basically, that's the question he's asking. Why would someone so compassionate, so just create something so terrible as suffering and evil?
Man,
Whence you could
God.
just skip all those. So
Why did
you
God
gave
have to
an
give?
answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why did
You,
God
you
have to?
gave one of the answers, and you said
Yeah.
God, which simply sounded me like God acts in mysterious ways. And to that, the response is, if that is your answer, then you are entering into a territory called skeptical theism.
Well,
And
that's not my answer. That's not how I said it. Maybe if that's how you
yeah,
received it, that's not. It's simple. It's simple, but we want to make it more profound than it is. Man is doing all this evil. Okay, God didn't create all the evil. He created man. Man disobeyed, and they're doing evil. And God is allowing this to go. God is allowing man to say, look, if you want eternal life, you could love me from your own free will. But if you don't, and you continue in the evil, you're going to be judged and be eternally dead when that judgment day comes. But this is the world we're in. There's evil because people do evil.
Yeah, my question to you was, for example, why did God create people with that free will in the first place when he didn't have to?
Well, because if he didn't give man a free will, then people are going to do what like a robot, and they're not going to freely love God on their own. They're just a robot. Why would God just create robots? What's the point of creating a robot?
That's his question. Why would a God create people in the very first place, basically?
Well, that's a good question. I don't have the answer for it. I always question too, why did God create us in the beginning? Maybe he wants a relationship with mankind. Maybe he decided, hey, I'm going to create and let people have a choice.
Do you not think it would have been better to create a world where they didn't have the capacity to commit, let's say, pernicious, horrific, horrendous suffering, and at the same time God would, engage with humanity in a more personal level, and that way it'll generate love? There's infinite number of different ways we can imagine a world to be created that doesn't involve rape, doesn't involve torture, doesn't involve genocide, and you can have love in it as well. What's wrong with that? For example, imagine think about it right now. There's a lot of people right now who live with their mom and dad and etc., and they don't undergo any sort of genocide or torture. They live in the first world, and there's also love in that house, right? You can think with your imagination that you can have loving behavior without needing to have, the excess levels of suffering that we have in this world.
Then you have to address those people that are causing the excess evil behavior. See, you give an example of a person living with his mother and father, and there's love, and there's none of this. That's fantastic. Those people are doing good. Well, address those people that are doing constantly evil, that want to overrule people and want to tell people what to do. And if you don't do it, we're going to beat you up. We're going to kill you, cut your arm off, do this, do that.
Sure, but that's not the question, right? So obviously we are addressing those things because that's why we have laws, what we have education, etc. That's a separate question regarding what we do about it as humans. But the question here is a philosophical conversation about how you can reconcile, or do we expect, on the hypothesis that a loving God created this world, do we expect this sort of world to be created? Because we can think about an infinite number of different types of worlds that he could have created, and he could have had all of the things that you're saying, like love and compassion and etc.
Yes, so that's going to come. He created that to begin with, like I said. Then there was a decision that went against God, and that brought in death, and that brought in evil, and people do evil. God created it good. According to the Bible, God created it good on the day that he rested, and after creation, he said everything is good. Now it was man that made a bad decision, and from that man's decision, now we have evil, and now it's playing out. Then we have Jesus. Jesus is the one that's going to give people a chance to have eternal life. So this is the choice. Despite philosophy and everything else and all this what if God could have done this, God could have done that, we're living in the world that we have already. We just have to do the best we can with what we have, and we have a choice. The choice is simply, do we want to have eternal life? This is how we go about it. If we don't, then we can live in our turmoil and complain and say all this stuff.
Yeah, Freddie, there's a slight misunderstanding. So the problem of evil is trying to disprove the existence of God, or think it's highly improbable that just loving being created this world. That's what we're trying to address here, right? So we obviously don't accept. What we're trying to say is that the evidence contradicts or lowers the probability of that such a being existing, because when we start off with the assumption of just loving characteristics, we don't expect this sort of world. So your point regarding that we just have this world is not engaging with what we're talking about, which is that the fact that we have this world decreases the probability of this sort of God, right? Because when you think about the concept of love, justness, and perfect abilities, he could have created the world in many various different ways. The fact that he didn't suggests that we don't have that sort of God. Can you see what I'm saying? This is an argument against the existence of God. So what you have to do is show, for example, how this doesn't lower the probability of God, right? What you're doing instead is telling us how this is just it. This is just how it is, and you're saying that God created free will. But my specific question to you was, if you start off with certain attributes, lovingness, mercifulness, compassionate, benevolence, perfect love with perfect resources, right? You have to know that this is not the only type of world God could have created. For example, for a fact that God can create heaven, in which there's just perfect, and it's a perfect world, right? So God could have straightforwardly created heaven, but he didn't, right? So, and there's no free will there, or there's not arguably any free will there. So you don't need free will even necessarily.
What do you mean there's no free will in heaven? Can you substantiate that?
I mean, there's different views on that. Maybe that's a debate within theistic circles. Some theists I know believe that there is free will. But either way, it's a perfect world, right? Either way, whether there's free will or not, there isn't any genocides, there isn't any torture.
Right, and that's what's going to come. But whether there's, let's just say hypothetically, there's no free will, or there is free will, but it's going to be a utopian paradise where there's no evil. So but whether there's free will or no free will, what difference does it make? So I'm trying to understand your free will or no.
You're bolstering our case, basically.
Yeah. You made the argument that free will was necessary for love, perfection, etc. Whatever. Free will was necessary, and I'm saying even the example of the heaven shows free will isn't necessary for that, because you can have a perfect world without free will. You can
have a perfectly.
I'm not right. I'm not talking about perfectly all these things perfectly. The free will came in with man when Adam disobeyed God. See, that's the free will. God said, "Don't eat of this one fruit." All of these, however many there was, a multiplicity of fruit of trees, eat of it except one.
Fruit?
Okay,
who created the fruit?
But the one,
who created the tree of knowledge?
Yeah, of course, God created everything. He created them.
Why?
Well, my simple answer would be because he's giving man a free will choice. Free will.
Why did he create the tree of
could God have not done that?
I couldn't. Both of you were talking. I don't know. I couldn't hear.
Madin, let me just ask this question. Why did God create the tree of knowledge, knowing well and beforehand that Adam would be falling for it, or Eve would be falling for it before Adam?
Well, I don't have that answer because I'm not God. God's ways are not ours, and his thoughts aren't ours. But
if you know that your kid might fall in a ditch, would you create a ditch?
Well, there's things that we can do to prevent it. There's always accidents that are happening, right? And
if you knew from,
but of course we know
well beforehand. If you knew well beforehand, God is all knowing, right? All knowing. Would you still create a ditch where you know your toddler could fall into?
If you create a ditch and you're going to tell your toddler, this is a ditch, stay away from it.
No, your toddler doesn't understand you.
Yeah, but see, your analogy isn't really equal, because we're talking about Adam, a man that had cognizant abilities, and as an adult. But
okay, let me add to Philo's example. Imagine you create your toddler. Imagine on the 2nd of July, you know your toddler is going to fall through a ditch. Right now, if you're a good parent, you're probably going to say, "Look, don't fall through the ditch." Right? If you're a really, really, really good parent, you're going to probably try and stop it. Not just give the instruction or the advice, but
you would barricade. You would barricade the ditch if you knew that there was a possibility. You would barricade it so that that even if the toddler stepped on top of it, he would not fall into it.
Yeah, exactly. So you
have a better solution than God, basically. Yes.
No. See, it's really you're given a false equivalence, because again, this is what's going on in normal life. Man creates and builds things, but people still die because of mishaps. People don't make sure things are protected, and there's accidents that happen. See, the thing is God. Again, I don't have the answer. Otherwise, I would be God.
Freddie, hold on. We were talking about a particular example of Adam or Eve eating through the tree of knowledge. Let's stick to that. Let's not jump around, right?
I wasn't jumping. You give these other examples with a
No, I
pothole and the
gave the
kids falling
example
in. So I'm trying
precisely
to,
to pinpoint
just
the
trying to
point that
respond.
we were making about
Yeah,
the point we were making about
yeah,
the tree of
Philo.
knowledge being
Yeah,
created, right?
Philo, just 1 minute. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to
Sure,
make this relevant
sure.
to
Go ahead.
the Adam and Eve
Go ahead.
situation. And Freddie, I tried to do that before. I was trying to build up to it. So obviously, like I started off, if you're a good parent, you're going to give your child advice. Don't on the 2nd of July, you're going to fall through a ditch. Make sure you don't fall through it. Now, if you're really, really, really good, you may even put some effort in to try and stop it. If you're perfectly good, and you have perfect amount of resources, and you created the ditch in the first place, it won't even make sense to create the ditch in the first place. It won't make sense to create the 2nd of July in the first place. Can you see? Now I'm making it more relevant. A human being obviously doesn't have infinite resources. He doesn't have infinite love, right? So what I'm trying to do is now go from the human example and add attributes to the human to show you that it's nonsensical to make, when you add attributes to the human, for the human to create the ditch in the first place, right? Because if you're a perfectly loving parent, right, you're going to really, really do your best to stop the child from falling. If you have perfect resources, you would eradicate or change the future so that the ditch doesn't exist in the first place. Or moreover, if you're the creator of the ditch on the 2nd of July, you won't create the ditch on the 2nd of July. That's what a perfectly loving being would do. That's the point of the example, right? So fallible humans obviously going to make mistakes. Fallible humans are going to have contradictory feelings. Fallible humans may even be malicious. They're incompetent. They have a finite number of resources. You can't just evaporate a ditch away. Yeah, you don't know. You may not be able to take the ditch away. For example, you might just give advice. And that's what we do as parents. You tell your child, don't get into drugs. Don't drive really fast on the road, because you can't control everything, but God can. In fact, God created all the conditions of all that, and he could have changed the conditions so it didn't fall that way. So can you see the example now becoming more relevant to the Adam and Eve situation? He didn't have to create the conditions for Adam and Eve to go and eat the apple. He didn't have to do any of that, because he could have just created heaven.
All right. I'll be as succinct as I can, and it doesn't mean to be harsh on anybody. It's just, I like I said, God is above us in our thoughts. So it's really this simple. If we believe there's this God, then we have a way to have an eternal life, to try to be happy and joyful in this life while we can, despite all the evil. And if we don't, then we're going to be doing what you guys do, question all of this, and you're going to be constantly unhappy and questioning and doing everything you guys are going through, and then ultimately you're going to miss out on the ultimate choice and the option we have, and that's eternal life or eternal death. Ultimately, that's going to happen, but you're going to continue to keep this conversation going, live stream after live stream, and we'll keep wondering about this loving God. But in the meantime, you're missing out. If you just decide that I'm going to search and seek this God and do what this God commands us to do, because he commands us to repent and obey him so we can have life, or we're going to live like we're doing now and questioning everything, and all this evil is still going to go on. So no matter what, you have all this philosophy about this and that, but evil will continue. However, in your personal life, you could bypass that with the best possibility of still having joy, hope of eternal life, because we're all going to die. We're all going to die, whether it's by old age or this evil that you talk about. And hopefully none of us get confronted by this evil, and we just die in a nice old age. But nonetheless, we're going to have to face God on Judgment Day, and then that's ultimately what's going to occur. So we either seek God for the best possible hope of life, or you guys can keep doing all of these things and you're not going to get anywhere.
All right, Freddie, you're making less points as arguments and more of what we call a khutbah, basically, a speech rather. So apologies that I'm
No,
pointing that
you
out
know,
to
no
you.
worries. I'm not
No,
offended
no,
because I'm
no,
trying
no,
to keep it
no.
simple.
That's not meant to be to offend
Yeah,
you.
but
But I'm just pointing out. So you made one accusation on us basically that you'll will be like you guys basically, and you think that we are unhappy for some reason
well,
or the
when
other.
I say you
At least
guys, that's quote
yeah.
in general, everybody, the
In general,
world.
yeah, and I see your point. I mean, you said in general, you're talking about those who don't believe, right? And that counts us as well, basically. And let me
Yeah,
tell you, I'm not unhappy, and I can tell you, Mahadan is not unhappy as well. And let me tell you, anybody in our stream, our co-host, is not unhappy. We are pretty happy, chappy guys. We work hard, and when we get a chance, we go on a stream. We talk philosophy. We ask deep questions and we settle on we take nothing for granted. We don't take answers for granted for deep questions.
Yeah.
Just because something makes us feel good, we just don't take that as an answer, right?
Yeah.
For
I,
us, a bitter truth is still much better than a happy delusion.
Yeah,
You
I
see the
mean,
point?
in terms of this particular question. I mean, I don't think about this all day long or at all. To be honest, I just live my life like everybody else, right? I work in the legal profession, for example. And life just continues. All the basic pleasures and higher pleasures that you might have, I have as well. They're just negating one thing. I don't necessarily believe in a alien being that you call God, for example, that created the world. Apart from that, most of other stuff are in total full motion, like everybody else. There's no difference in that respect, and I'm not thinking about this all the time. But I think you missed the kind of the thrust of the question, because you speak almost as though we already think there is a God and we just need to accept it. But when you don't seem to realize that the problem of evil is more of an argument against the existence of a good and loving God. It's like saying there is
I real no, not to interrupt. I realize that I do, but what I'm saying that if you don't believe there's a God to begin with, and then you're gonna
one of the
attribute love to this God, then
no.
I don't understand why you want to talk about this God. If there's a good, loving God, why is all there this evil? But I don't believe in this God.
This is why I'm saying that you don't understand what we're saying, right? Is because we're not starting off with the assumption there is no God. Then obviously it'll be stupid to even ask the question, right? With one of the reasons, not the only reason, one of the reasons that we don't believe in a God is due to the conclusions of the problem of evil argument, right? In the same way, for example, if I said to you, an alien every Friday, right, would create a cake in every household, and that doesn't happen, that would be good reasons to think that sort of alien doesn't exist. And the problem of evil is similar. So it's the conclusion of the problem of evil that increases our confidence to think that there isn't that sort of God, that sort of creature, right? So just like an alien who creates cakes every Friday, if cakes don't appear in your household every Friday, that's good reason to think, maybe this sort of alien doesn't exist.
Yeah, but I respectfully, this is just a false equivalency again. These analogies, in my view, aren't equal. They're not really substantiated by something logical when we're dealing with a God that's a creator. And if you don't believe there's a God that created, first of all, you'd have to go back and figure, okay, how did we get here? Did a God create it? If not, I don't believe in a God, but how did we get here? How has all this come about? And then you'd have to address that. But now you're addressing this supposed loving God.
Those would deal with different arguments, right? So the problem of those we will have different arguments for. How we got here, we'll have a different argument for, right? So it is analogous, because what I'm trying to say is that just like the alien who makes cakes every Friday is a prediction of the theory of that sort of alien existing. It's a prediction.
But see, that's just. But see, you make this statement. We would first have to have some kind of evidence that even occurred to have this belief. We already have this understanding. We're here, humans speaking, talking on a created world. Whether it's by a God you don't believe in, or it is a God that I believe in. In either case, we're here experiencing this and talking about why this loving God permits evil. So this is kind of where I'm at, trying to really understand you, but philosophy doesn't go with the Word of God. God, even in the Bible, it tells us as Christians to don't even deal with philosophical views, because this is the problem. Because people that have this philosophy are wanting to deceive Christians with philosophical words and statements and all of this, and it's not something that is cohabitable with the Word of God. And this is the problem which you guys are having, because you're resisting that there is a true God, regardless of whether this true loving God exists and all the evil going around.
Give me just 1 minute.
But see, it's man that's doing the evils.
Right. Freddie, I think.
Yeah, first of all, it's not
Madden,
just
just give
man
me
who's
1
doing
minute.
the evil. But it's
Just
not
give me
just
1
man
minute.
who's doing the evil. We've got earthquakes, we've got hurricanes, we've got thunder, we've got
All that's
Madden,
addressed
give
in
me
the
1 minute.
Bible. Yeah, all that's addressed in the Bible. But
We need to close our conversation with Freddie. Freddie,
yeah,
I
no
think
worries. I thank you
yeah,
for the
yeah.
time. I know somebody else came up, so hey,
No,
maybe another time.
I think we need a longer conversation some other day, probably, because I think you are starting off at some point where I think we can question a lot. But right now, I'm going to
You
withhold.
guys are welcome to come to my channel. I'm sure some of the people over there would be very interested in having a dialogue with you on some of this. So anyways, I thank you. You guys have a good day.
All right, you too, Freddie. Yeah, and apologies if you felt
No,
bad
I'm
about.
good. It's all good. I'm not offended.
All
Take
right,
care.
no, okay, all right, perfect.
Bye.
Freddie. All right, thanks for dropping by. All right, Madan, we have Ultimate Biblic Judeo-Christian YouTuber. Hello, how are you? Can you hear us? Can you hear us? Your mic is unmuted, so I'm not sure what's happening. Can you hear us? You did say you can. Are you there? I think he has stepped out for a bit, maybe. Yeah, I think, that conversation was not going anywhere, Martin. That's why I had to say,
yeah. I don't
stop it.
think he really understood what we're saying, and he just
Yeah, no, I think his position has a very big flaw that probably, I mean, I should have probably said it over there, but then the conversation would have gone on for another 15-20 minutes, and that's why I didn't say that over there. And that is that his starting point is that I accept that my God is true God. And from that point on, I evaluate every claim, and I just don't take philosophy very seriously in terms of questioning my God. And that you can say the same thing for anybody, and that'll be true for Hinduism, for Islam, and everything else pretty much. And at some point or the other, you'll have to delve into these philosophical questions, whether Hinduism is more sensible or Islam or Christianity. You'll have to deal with these logical questions at some point or the other.
I mean, he's put forwarding a philosophy. For example, he's putting forward the Theodicy of free will as a philosophy. There's a philosophical position.
That's philosophy, exactly.
Renowned philosophical position that's been evoked by people like Alvin Plantinga, a theist philosopher, for example. So he doesn't seem to realize that he is grappling with philosophical devices in defense of his God, but then using the word philosophy to deride it again and go, we don't use philosophy, but you're using philosophy, right? You're using a justification, a argument, the free will defense of theodicy, in order to explain why all this suffering exists is because of human error, human free will. And then we're attacking the free will defense by showing that there are various ways God could have designed human beings without needing free will, or could have put in free will and still allowed a perfect world to happen, or it doesn't fit comfortably with the attributes of God. And he doesn't seem to realize that. What I'm trying to say is that because of all these alternatives, that it lowers the likelihood that this sort of God exists. Just in the same sense, if I said there was an alien every Friday creates a cake, right? And you don't see the cake. Just similarly, if you say there's a loving God and you see lots of suffering, and that kind of contradicts the existence of that sort of God, right? If you say your friend Charlie is the most tidiest person in the world, tidy, it's clean, and you go to his house and it's just a wreck, you would say, no, this sort of person doesn't exist. Charlie, the tidy person, is not true, right? That's
Right, right.
all we are doing. And he doesn't seem to,
Yeah.
when we're giving examples, he just doesn't seem to realize it. And he moves on to a different topic, like, but then you need to explain how the world was created. And well, we have different arguments for that. It could be the case that Charlie exists for other reasons, right? If you bring them up.
I think apologies to Freddie that we had to do what we usually do with Wakas, pretty much, right? We had to stop him from, straying, going on tangents and stuff, pretty much, right? So, anyways, Freddie, no hard feelings. You're welcome to join in again, and we'll try to join your streams as well. But, Madhin, you want to finish your point? And
no, do you want to address this comment by some users who's Suhail Ahmed, who's talking to us?
What's the point? Mahadin or Philo? Which one is the first one? Okay.
Suhail, do you want to come on? You want to talk to us?
Yeah. Suhail, you want to drop by in our stream and have a conversation? You can drop by instead of us talking you through your chat comments. It would be nice to for you if you can drop by and have a conversation. And let me tell you, we don't bite. And we are not baby eating atheists. I don't know where that came from.
So before he comes on, do you want to comment on it, Philo? Do you want to say something what is written? Do you want to first?
I'm trying to find the thread. Madhin, right? Aliens aren't one. It's in many, so relying to aliens for that direction of question is wrong. Do you understand the question? I'm just not able to get the question.
Well, I'm not.
That's why
just to clarify, Suhail, I'm not saying we've disproven the existence of aliens. Of course not. The example was to just as a hypothetical to show, for example, if somebody's sitting around, for example, and they make somebody says to you, "There's this alien who comes down to Earth and bakes cakes every Friday. He bakes a cake every Friday in everybody's house, and we don't see that happening. Then we can disqualify the existence of that type of alien. That's it. That doesn't. That's not saying that aliens.
Yeah,
don't
that's a very particular kind of an alien that does that kind of a thing.
Exactly.
That's not denying the existence of aliens as a whole, as a category, pretty much. That's the point.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just
Yeah, through common sense. If somebody said that an alien bakes a cake in your house at this day, or it doesn't have to be an alien, it could be anybody. Charlie, say there's a human called Charlie who is the most tidiest person ever.
Or a Pink Panther.
Yeah, or whatever, whatever.
Whatever.
I don't want to use, I don't want to use like, whatever. Charlie, who's the tidiest person ever. It will be good evidence against the existence of Charlie, the most tidiest person ever, if we see a wreck in his house, we see a mess, we see lack of hygiene, unsanitary conditions, mayhem, a clusterfuck in his cupboard, right? This would disprove the existence of the truthfulness of Charlie, the tidiest person. And in similar vein, now, is that disproving all types of people called Charlie? No. Is that disproving all human beings? No, it's not. In similar vein, if you say there's a good, loving, just God, the existence of suffering disproves that type of God. Does that disprove all types of gods? No.
No, it doesn't disprove gods as a broad category, and that's probably the problem we had communicating with Freddie. In any case, what other comments are there by rely on aliens due to their put small position? Okay, I don't think so. We were talking about that suffering in small position.
So that might be correct. Let's hypothetically assume there's more happiness than there is suffering. Here's the issue. Yeah, we're saying perfectly just being won't create even 50% suffering. Can you see that? Otherwise, what does this mean? Let's say there's an imperfectly good being. He may create a little bit of good and a little bit of suffering. Let's say there's a being that is 80% really good, 20% evil. We may think that he will create a world that is 80% good with 20% evil, right? Let's say we have a being that is 90% good and 10% evil. Then he may create a world that is 90% good, 10% suffering and evil in it. Yeah. But if there's a being that's 100% good and just, we shouldn't expect any suffering, right? Or any gratuitous suffering, right? Can you see what I'm saying? So first of all, I genuinely don't think you can quantify it like that, Suhail, where to say that there's more good. I don't know whether if there's more good or suffering. I didn't mathematically and statistically.
Yeah, I mean, how do you even assess it basically? How do you do the statistics on it basically?
Yeah, I would say there's good arguments to suggest there's more evil. There's good arguments to suggest there might be more good. I can't decide. But the point is, it doesn't fit with a perfectly just, compassionate, merciful creator.
I mean, Madan, if you sorry to interrupt you. If you asked me, I would say there's an overwhelming evidence towards more suffering and more evil than there is for good, basically, because it's the good only lies in terms of humans. For animals, which are many orders of magnitudes, I mean, in numbers, they are larger than human population. There is only suffering and suffering, predation and suffering. The whole mechanism of evolution is the whole point of creation that the creation rests on, is resting on evolution, which is the whole mechanism itself is predicated on death, destruction, and predation, pretty much.
Yeah. So, like I said, I absolutely agree. It's a very plausible argument because I've not done the statistical calculations or mathematical. I don't even have to go around doing that. But it's not obvious at all that there's more good than bad. But it doesn't matter, right? Because we're talking about perfect justice, and if there's perfect justice, it seems highly counterintuitive and contradictory with the notion of perfect justice to even have 20% of the suffering that we have.
If we have a comment from Robert Warren. If you are not a believer of Islamic monotheism, you probably haven't read the Holy Quran with an open mind, right? Okay, this is a facetious comment, basically, if I read that correctly, right?
Can anyone hear me now?
All right. Yes. Yes, we can hear you now. Let me hide that comment. What's your name? YouTuber, Ultimated Biblic Judeo-Christian. All right. It's hard for me to understand your name, comprehend your name completely, but hello. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I have posted my argument proving biblic Judeo-Christianity within this side chat, which I will just read out briefly.
If it is way too long, then I would say maybe just spell it out briefly.
Meta-revelatory illicit biblic Judeo-Christianity, trademarking implied agape martyrial anti-godism, young flat earthly meta-trademark prevalent hyphenal religious Simaziness educing www.wikipedia.org/wiki/list of best-selling books, anti-counterfeitly conjunctiving www.wikipedia.org/wiki.
What's going on here?
I'm not quite sure. Do you have a journal paper written on this, or is it just a Wikipedia page?
Was I muted? Was I muted?
No, we could listen to you. We could listen to you.
Yeah, we didn't understand what you were saying, so I wanted to mute and ask you, what is this? What you're saying?
I think he has a theory, but if I understand him correctly, he has a theory which probably he has a link to, but I'm not quite sure whether it's the link is.
If you have a link and you want us to read it and respond to it or something like that, just send it to us send it to our email. Simple as that. Do you have any questions that you can or discuss right now rather than just sending a link? Can you speak with us, engage with us about a matter?
So I'm not gonna click on that link. Can you explain it to in layman's terms?
If you want to talk about the induced Wikipedia links, then you would have to concede to God existing first per the first word of the argument meta revelatory. So I don't know how much of the argument you heard because I didn't realize I was muted at some stage.
No, you didn't make any argument. You just mumbled a few joined a few words together that sounded pretty spooky to me, to be quite honest. Sorry, can you use a simpler language to explain what you mean by that? That's not an argument. That's just a mumble jumble of a couple of words to make a sentence, which doesn't make any sense, to be honest.
Personally, you are making fallacious claims per my arguments, which is synonymous with a reason for what I am proving. So we can just start with the first word, meta revelatory. So that's in regards to.
What does that mean? What does that mean? Meta revelatory. What is that?
So that's in regards to the necessary preconditions to knowledge, that of God, for he is revealingly ultimate truth, aka edgeless or wiseness.
Right. So what you need to do then, everything that you're saying, you need to rephrase in simpler language in a way that can be communicated.
Right. So now you explained one word pretty much, right? Meta revelatory, which words. I don't think I have read in any philosophical journals. Is it included in Encyclopedia of Philosophy, Stanford?
Somewhat. So I will.
Can you paste a link to it, and I'll open it for everybody to see it?
Well, my definition's more precise.
I'm talking about Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Can you paste a link to this definition in that? I'll open it for everybody to see.
To me, you're setting up somewhat of a red herring, a diversionary ploy to not properly address my definition of meta revelatory.
I'm thinking of you as being a philosopher who has a great idea and who wants to, reveal the world his great ideas. That's why I'm asking for these definitions. Yeah, right. You see what my point is?
I understand that you're possibly diverging away from my definition, as it's very precise.
Let's do it your way. So can we just go? Can you just go on simply explaining it in layman's terms so that our less, philosophically bent audience can understand it as well?
So there's 2 points here. By you asking me, well, I'll just simplify my previous definition. Mm-hmm. So meta revelatory is that of onto epico epistemology. So God is revealingly ultimate truth, or he is edgeless or wiseness. So he is the necessary precondition for all creaturely intelligibility, multicotymously. So for us to know we are finite, we reference God, for he is non-finite.
And what's your argument for it?
My argument for what?
For this claim.
To me, you're asking a contradictory question because I presented a logical entailment. So I can't deduce meta-revelation. We have to start with meta-revelation complementing virtuous spiral reasoning. So I'm not begging the question.
Your meta-revelatory sentence doesn't make any sense, to be quite honest.
And I will simplify it again. So God is revealingly ultimate truth, for he is absolute, eternal, and revelatory. Truth
Yeah.
is,
Yeah, that's a circular definition, or whatever the sentence you have put forth here.
to me, you
How do
are
To you, it sounds
contra-
all well. To you, it sounds all well, but everybody hearing it can understand that.
So
Or Martin, you
As
wanted
I-
to add something? Martin, you wanted to add something?
you're going to clearly have an argument for that because you need a justification for it. Because what if I said, for example, Bob is necessary preconditions of truth? Well, you're going to say, no, Bob isn't, God is. So why? Like, what's the reasoning or evidence or whatever it is that you have?
I'll address the first point, then your point after. So I appeal to virtuous spiral reasoning. So I'm not committing vicious circularity. So spiral reasoning is synonymous with virtuous circularity. So I'm not begging the question, you're possibly conflating circular reasoning to begging the question. So by me articulating meta-revelation, and for you to ask to prove that, you're committing a informal fallacy by asking for proof that you're already aware of, assuming that you are soulful. And then the Bob response, you're possibly equivocating Bob to God, for God's name is not Bob. So there's only one ultimate truth. Hence, ye are losing a lot of.
Sorry, Martin, you wanted to go ahead? Yeah.
Ye are losing a lot of devil's advocacy points here.
Sorry, say that again. You're losing what?
Ye to make
points. Yeah.
Do you know if you had to say this in, let's say, in a court of law, do you think people would understand you? So why do you, if you make yourself more transparent and comprehensible, maybe we could actually engage with what you're talking about, because I'm not sure what you're saying here, right? You're saying begging the question is not the same thing as circular, or by simply assuming that I'm engaging with you, I'm already assuming your truth, right? I get this presuppositionalist stuff, but you still need to justify it. You still need to make an argument for it. That's why presuppositionalists, they have arguments. They actually do provide arguments, right? After you've justified it, maybe it is the case that everything you're saying is correct. You still have the argument. Presuppositionalists, they do make an argument. What's your argument?
To me, you're asking a contradictory, informal question as I have presented the truth. So the argument would be for which God, but for a God, we all know that in general, a God exists per meta revelation. So the begging the
but
question.
that's a false premise that we all know. That's a false premise. Justify that premise. That's what Mahadin is asking.
To me, you have contradicted yourself, for it is not a false premise.
No, it's a false premise. Justify that premise. We all know. No, we all don't know.
Personally, you are still contradicting yourself.
Justify that claim. Come on.
Personally, you are still contradicting yourself.
Personally, that's your subjective opinion. That's perfectly fine, and I agree to your point. But your argument is not gonna work here. You can go to some Bible thumping belt of United States and pose your argument over there. That's probably gonna be fine. Not on this stream over here with Martin and myself.
When I say personally, I am believing that I understand your vocabulary. So it's not about me presenting a subjective truth. So to me, you have been contradicting yourself. As I stated earlier, I'm presenting a logical entailment, so it's not a claim subjectively.
Your logical entailment has a false premise. That's what we are trying to say.
To me, you are still contradicting yourself and implicitly referencing my argument.
Saying that you're contradicting yourself is not gonna make your argument good.
Yeah, would you be able to explain how we are contradicting ourselves?
No, I think saying that his definition entails the
Yes, I know.
existence of God,
But
basically,
I'm just
right?
trying to get him to substantiate that it does entail it in different
Yes,
ways
yes,
by asking him, how are we contradicting ourselves? Because
yes. Okay, go ahead.
inevitably, you'll have to then show that, look, this entails X or this entails B, you know, and that would be your argument. So I'm just trying to get you to make the argument.
All right, yeah, go ahead.
So how are
To
we contradicting?
me,
Show us our contradiction, where we are contradicting ourselves.
for implicitly referencing my argument per the side chat message, so you may not fully understand meta revelatory. I have simplified that maybe 3 times. So just to do that again, God revealingly exists, so he grounds creaturely intelligibility. So for us to know of temporalities, we have to reference God as an ultimate authority. Temporalities can't ground themselves intelligibly, that's viciously circular. So we need God as our ultimate unifier. Edgeless all wiseness. That complements meta revelatory.
Sorry, what was the last sentence? Edgeness or?
Edgeless all wiseness.
What does that mean?
It
Can
means
you explain those things, edgeless and wiseless?
edgeless or wiseness is that of God being not contingent on external things.
Okay,
So
can I just interrupt before you go? Let's just say the following, right? We don't really understand exactly what you're saying. Unfortunately, it's not because we're not trying to engage with you. We are. So let's just call it a day for now, right? Maybe you can give us a written version. Email us a written version of what you're saying, and maybe we will understand it better. For the sake of argument, let's just say that you have won. Yeah, you've duped us. I don't know what to say to what you're saying, to be honest. Right. So we will talk to Robert now because he's been waiting, and unfortunately, with you, we'll just have to have a conversation another time. Is that okay?
Yeah. Why don't you send us? You can see our email over there, right? Send us whatever you have written, or wherever we can find the written text of what you have, where you are taking your theology from, and then we can read it and then respond to you when and you can drop by in the next stream and we can carry forward the conversation after we have read your stuff, right? Or if there's no written text on any of the websites, maybe you can just write it briefly on our email as to what your hypothesis, what your argument is, basically, right? Because I doubt anybody understands here in our audience as well. Anybody has understood your argument, to be honest. Meta revelatory. I don't think
it could just be that you're too smart for us. You're too intelligent. Yeah.
My best advice would be, and I'm not trying to get 3 points here, but my best advice would be to go to my first video of my YouTube channel, and there is a description portion where the argument is elucidated very finely.
Okay.
All right. One more question, very small question. Who are the main philosophers who are following that argument that you have posed? And I'm talking about the Christian philosophers who are following the argument that you have presented.
I don't know. I may be the only one who is honest about this.
And are you a
position.
philosopher? Are you a philosopher?
In the colloquial sense, a lover of wisdom, yes.
Okay. All right. All right. Nice to talk to you. And then if you can, please do send us your write-up. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. Great.
Somewhat,
nice
yes. Okay. Yep. Thanks.
You take
Bye.
care. You take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. All right, Robert. Sorry to have you wait for so long. What do you have for us? I think I thought you wrote a message, and that was probably, it seemed in lighter vein, but you can only, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yeah, yeah. How you guys doing this evening?
We're good. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, how about yourself?
I'm okay. I'm okay. No, I was just listening, and I was just trying to understand exactly because from the screen that you posted, it had like all the different symbols of kind of philosophy of thought on religion and understanding. And my
Right.
whole piece, my whole belief is like, I read scripture, I look at, I listen to conversations, and it's for me it's like basic, reasoning and common sense. And if you can read and comprehend, and if you have read the Holy Quran and you can comprehend, I think it gives you that wisdom and understanding of why you're here as a human being and what your purpose is. So I think it answers those questions. And for individuals who haven't read the book and think they can actually speak on God and creation, is kind of, for me, speaking out of ignorance. So
So, are you a
that's
Muslim?
my
Are you a
that's my
Muslim?
thought process.
Can I ask you this? Are you a Muslim?
Yeah.
I can't hear you. Can you speak up a
Yes.
bit?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
you are,
Yeah. I'm
right, right.
Muslim. Right.
Your name doesn't suggest that. That's why I was wondering, basically, and
Yeah.
that's why I thought that your comment was in jest. Basically, it was a facetious comment. But
Right.
yeah,
No, it was. I wasn't trying to be facetious. I was trying to be, I mean, real, because I hear a lot of folks have conversations about Islam and people who believe and follow that way of life and never have read the Holy Quran. Don't even have an understanding about what Islam teaches, but they have a lot of opinions on Islam. And I find that to be funny and just totally just, ignorant. And I don't get it.
right, right. Martin, you want to ask any question to Robert?
Well, what's his question? I mean, what's your point? You don't get it. Why are you telling us this?
No, I
I'm
think he's
asking you
just
guys, so I'm
clarifying that.
asking you, you're having the screen and you're asking about religions. So
Mhm.
what do you know? What do you know about Islam? What is it that you read in the Holy Quran? Or what is it about Islam that you disagree with? Why are you not a believer?
Right. No, the
You
reason.
have come to an ex-Muslim channel, right?
Right. Why are you not a believer? Why don't you believe in the Holy Quran? What in the Holy Quran have you read that you don't
I think,
believe
I
is
think,
true
I think,
from
I
who
think
created you?
philosophically, we have come to a conclusion that
Right.
any concept of a god or gods that
Okay.
has a certain attributes, more likely than not, cannot exist, right? So some of us here are atheists, and some of us are agnostics, basically, right? But if you
Right.
probe us in detail, we'll probably say that we are not 100% saying that we know that God doesn't exist, pretty much, right? But we have a fair certain credence level that there's no such God as the God of the Quran or God of the Bible, Yahweh, or the Brahma, or whatever you may have, right? Or the Thor, or the Zeus, or whatever you may have, right? So that's the idea here, and we have come to that conclusion based on mostly
No,
philosophical thinking,
no.
Yeah.
You should probably just speak for yourself rather than just use a collective we. I think because although you have
Yeah. I mean, I'm saying for myself, and so this last
right.
we was for myself, pretty much, right?
Yeah. So yeah. The reason I asked you, Robert, like, what's your point, is because you've come on and just assume. It seems like you're implicit in your understanding is that we've just ignorantly came to a conclusion or something, right? And I would ask you actually give you the burden to demonstrate what we're ignorant about. If you've not surveyed or ventured through our videos or understood what we know, or analyzed, evaluated, address all our arguments, why would you make the assumption that we have ignorantly came to a conclusion without even knowing us? So it's a bit strange that you just come along and you just go, you know, like, what do you know about the Quran? Like, you know, or the implicit in your question is that you're assuming that we misread something or misunderstood something, and you have no reason to think that.
No, I mean, if you can actually, I mean, because I'm like always, you know, there are people that I listen to who talk about their disbelief or not believing in God, period. Like you say, some people are atheists. And I don't understand someone who's saying they're atheists, because our ability as human beings to be able to think and talk and hold this conversation, it should say to all of us implicitly internally that there is a higher intelligence. I mean, for us to be able to have the creative intelligence that we have, that would say to me, you know, just as a human being, that I would know that there is a higher intelligence. And I think that's in all of us, you know, and I think if you read the Holy Quran, it actually answers that, and it informs you of that, and it
So
explains that to you, that that there is a
Robert,
higher intelligence, and not believing in a higher intelligence is like not believing in your own intelligence.
Robert, are you a convert?
does that problem apply to God as well? Does God need another higher intelligence as well?
1 minute. Yeah, Robert, are you a convert?
A convert? No, I'm not a convert.
Revert. Yeah.
I don't. Man, my family is Christian, so I don't know if I'm a convert. I mean, you know,
Did you revert to Islam at a particular age?
I've been Muslim since. Yeah, I mean, I don't. I go in the sense that, you know, we're all born Muslim. Now, are you believers? Those who
I think,
believe and be able
Robert,
to think and
can
consider.
we keep our conversation succinct, right? So answer to your Madin's question is yes, you are a revert. Is that good?
I'm not a revert. I don't know. I'm not a revert. No.
So
you believe? You were a Christian before, and then you became a Muslim, right?
no,
I said my family is Christian. My family, I was born into a Christian family.
Right. So you discovered Islam at a later age.
I discovered Islam when I was 8 years old. 7 or 8 years old. I've been Muslim since I was 7 or 8.
Okay, that's
so you're a revert basically, right?
No, I think in his case it might be a little bit different, because he was probably too much of an adolescent to even understand what he believed. So I would classify him. I won't say he. I mean, we're talking about a couple of years of difference. I think 8 years old is enough to be almost like a born believer, in the sense that you were raised in a environment that was Islamic. Were you raised in an environment that was Islamic, though, in the sense that did you encounter an Islamic mosque or masjid or community in which you kind of learnt about Islam? So in that sense, it was a part of your socialization and upbringing as well.
Yes. I mean, you know, for me, it was in the Nation of Islam. So, yes.
Oh, the Nation of Islam.
Right.
So you believe you're part of the Nation of Islam.
sorry to say this, but
part of the Nation of Islam.
that's a whole different story. Yeah.
I had relatives and friends who were part of the Nation of Islam.
Okay.
And I grew up with those people. But I never was an active member of the Nation of Islam. I'm just an individual who has read the Holy Quran, and I feel like I read and comprehended what I read, and I believe in what I read. So I'm what you would call one of the believers, or one of the mu'minoons. Those who come to believe.
Right.
Because we can only believe, just like some people don't believe there's a God, and there's other people who believe there is a God. So, you know, you guys, some people say, you know, out of your conscience and your your experiences, you come to feel that there is no God, that you just came to be, like a cell phone, maybe. But other folks, use basic reasoning and, say, someone had to think of me and create me. The same way, if you look around in your room or whatever structure you're in, there's one common denominator. Somebody thought of everything that you're touching, that you see. Outside of the trees, the birds, the stars, the moon, the sun, the stars. We didn't think of that stuff. Someone else thought of that. But all that other physical stuff that we create with our hands, we thought of.
Right. So that's
Yeah,
the
So I
design.
mean, it's just natural for
you need
there to
to,
be a
Robert,
higher
Robert,
intelligence that
Robert,
thought of
So,
Robert.
us.
Can you
Robert,
hear us,
That's just a
Robert?
natural concept
Right,
for
Robert,
reasoning, natural
Robert.
reasoning.
yeah, all
Robert,
right.
you
So,
need to listen to our design argument debunking videos, basically, right?
yeah.
We have done 2 streams on it, basically, and on multiple streams we have
So,
mentioned
Robert,
why.
yeah. Sorry, Philo. I know we all of us
Yeah,
are passionate.
I'm just mentioning him to go through those
Yeah.
video clips, basically,
Yeah.
right?
As Philo said, we've got a video on the design argument already. So let me answer your first question now that I've got a better understanding of what you're actually saying, etc. So you asked me, or asked us, right? So about what has brought us here or something like that. So I'm obviously born in a Muslim family, etc., and been raised in an Islamic family. I have obviously read the Quran, etc. Read more than the Quran. I have studied Islam, etc. Quite deeply, etc. But the reasons for my departure from Islam are less to do with, I would say, scriptural reasons and more to do with my education within academic philosophical circles. So during my degree, I studied in part philosophy, and philosophy was the study of like reasoning, logic, and the study of the philosophy of religion, which you specifically, for example, look at several arguments for God's existence. The design argument, the teleological arguments, fine-tuning argument, the Kalam cosmological argument, or the many other cosmological arguments. There are other arguments from like ontological argument, the moral argument, all of these things. And after studying these things, which in an academic setting, you get exposed to a variety of different views, and you learn how to logic, learn how to think clearly. I realized that the arguments for the existence of God from natural theology, like from design and so on, were either flawed or can be countered with equally plausible explanations that don't require a God, or etc. To the point where now that I think that existence of God is highly unlikely. And then when you add stuff like scripture to it, it decreases the likelihood. I think scripture, I think the Islamic texts, etc., are highly likely to be man-made. Okay, so that's my rough summary of my journey out of the folds of religion.
Yeah. Did you get that?
All right, Robert, are you there? Can you hear us, Robert? All right, I think, Madan, we're almost about to touch 2 hour mark. So what we're going to do is
Yeah,
we're going to...
I hear you guys, and I think yeah, I mean, I think I hear what you're saying as far as your experience and your reading of the Quran, and you coming up in an Islamic family, but with your reading of the Quran and your understanding, I still don't see where with the actual facts that's pointed out there, that things of information that we as human beings would have had no knowledge of at that time, and how you come to the reason where you're now going to say you don't believe. It's like, I don't, but I guess it's, there's those of us who believe, and then there's those of us who come not to believe. In the same way that Islam tells you about, like Alzheimer's, how it tells us, some of us, it happens. I get it.
Yeah, I think your voice broke up for a couple of seconds, Robert. So we couldn't hear you. We couldn't understand past 10 seconds of your last point, basically. Can you repeat that?
No, what I was saying is that I understand what you when you say, you know, there's reasons why folks come to where they feel as though we just come to exist, that there is no intelligent design. I mean, when I hear it from intelligent people, it's kind of hard to kind of fathom, but you know, I get it.
Shall I,
See,
shall I,
But then
I told you that
I
same
don't get it.
problem.
I don't get it, and I do get it,
Robert,
you know.
you'll have to you'll have to take all the turtles all the way up, basically. If the argument that you are trying to apply to humans, that intelligence requires another intelligence, then you'll have to either concede that your God is not intelligent, or that your God requires another intelligence, and then that God requires another intelligence, and so on and so forth, right? So your argument is flawed by definition, I'm saying, right? Can you see the problem in your argument? We can't hear you. I think, Robert, you're having an issue
No,
on your side.
I don't see where there's a. I see where you're not. You know, kind of like
Why do you think an intelligence requires
there's what
an
you call
intelligent
a
creator?
certain there's what you call a hidden reality, and you know we sometimes want to deny the hidden reality.
That's perfectly fine. That
The hidden
everybody does.
reality.
But you have to point out why and why we are doing it here in your case. That's the question. Your point might be right for other things that
so
some
do you
people and
think,
everybody does do that.
yeah,
Yeah.
are you saying God, so the thing is, the thing that intelligence requires intelligence, what Philo is trying to say is obviously that God would be this intelligent kind of organism. Not an organism, but organism, obviously not. But what
Being,
we mean
basically.
is this kind of unexplained thing that just exists by virtue of its own being, right? Maybe it's like a ultimate final stopping point, right? And that doesn't need a creation. So the world needs you're saying the world needs a creation. You know, galaxies need a creator, sorry. The world needs a creator because it's a creation, but God isn't, for example. God is this kind of ultimate thing that doesn't play by the same rules, right? The universe needs a creator, but the God has special rules, right? Which exempts him from that logic, which is design, you know, create intelligent things need intelligent creators. What Philo is trying to say is that what if those special rules applied at a lower level at the universe in the first place? You know, you know how you're exempting God? What if the universe was such that it was exempt from a designer? Right? In fact, that is what we kind of discover. So you ask, why do intelligent people think there is no designer behind the world? It's because of the same reason you think there isn't an intelligent creator behind a God. Because they think, right? They think there are special and different rules about the universe that don't apply to it in a way that we create mobs, cars, factories. We create these things, but the universe doesn't need a creator like that, right? And there's plenty of things in physics that are odd in that sense. For example, I don't know if you know about the theory of relativity. It contradicts our common sense, right? Time, you might think time just flows in a constant rate everywhere and every place, Newtonian time. But Einstein came along and showed that actually time is very different, right? And in similar vein, there's plenty of other stuff in the world that operates different to our primitive existence here, right? The things in the universe that operates via special types of rules that doesn't apply, and we can't apply our human understandings to it. Just like the way you're saying about God. Can you see that? I'm not sure if I've articulated myself properly because.
I mean, I get it. I get it. You know, where, you know, there are things that's happening, but I don't understand. Just like I said, you know, they talk about how the miracle of us being able to just speak, how children learn languages, and how people are
Why
able
can't
to,
it why can't it arise
just
from natural?
communicate. I mean, you just look at,
Robert,
if you just
Robert,
look at,
Robert, we see and we understand your problem. I want to cut short it so that you have already spelled it out twice or thrice. We understand that. My question is, why do you think that this can't happen through natural processes, right? And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna apologize to you by closing our stream on that question. You are more than welcome to join us on our next stream, and we'll take you in as soon as you drop by, and we can probably carry on the conversation from that point onwards. Is that okay by you? What you can do is just subscribe to our channel, and then just press the notification bell, and so whenever we have a next stream, you'll be one of the first ones to join the stream. Is if that's okay by you? What do you think?
yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. You guys have a really great evening, and it was really great talking with you guys.
Yeah, sure. And then
Thank
think
you so
through
much.
these issues that Madin and I have mentioned, right? About the intelligence and all those things, and why, especially why is it that you think that these things couldn't occur without with natural processes, right? And then we can carry forward the conversation from that point on, right? And we do have an English only channel as well, Unveiling Faith. If you want, probably you can subscribe to that as well, and we'll probably slowly start moving towards doing our English only streams on that channel only, right? But yeah, for the timing, just subscribe to this one, right, Robert? Madin wanted to add something. Madin, go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to say, either way, in each reality, for example, your reality, Robert, and my reality, we are accepting something weird, right? In your case, you're accepting a intelligent being that doesn't have a parent, doesn't have mother or father, doesn't have a creator. He just exists. When you ask the question, where did that come from? You just stop there. Even though for example, as you said, intelligent things must have creators, but you're just stopping somewhere. And the point just to get you help you understand why atheists can stop at the idea that the universe doesn't need a creator is for the very same reason, right? The universe is this intelligent looking thing. If we're going to stop at some intelligence, why can't we stop at what we can already grasp and see, rather than adding an extra supernatural reality where there's a God? That's it, right? In each reality, it is. I agree with you. It's completely weird, right? Right, that our universe just exists and it just creates things. But it'll also be weird to think there's a God who just exists and he just creates things and there's no creator behind him, right? Because we have no example down here on earth of a person that exists without any other creator. So whether you think there's a person without a creator or you think there's an object like a universe without a creator, but in both situations, you're accepting something weird. But in our case, what we're trying to say is that we at least see the universe and you can accept the universe, whereas you're adding an extra weird thing as well to it, like a God, where we don't need to do that. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, just real quick, job. I just only say to that, it's like, it states in the Holy Quran that man is naturally ungrateful. And so, and there's also a screen I just watched yesterday, and it talks about like 20 miracles that the Holy Quran states. And these were like updated ones. And I would, really welcome you to look into that and just do a little bit more research, before you come to your final conclusion. Because at the end of the day, it's like I said, it's always about the hidden reality. And the hidden reality is we can believe what we can believe, but neither one of us know. That's the truth. You know what I'm saying? We can use our basic reasoning and understanding as human beings, but the hidden reality is there's some things that none of us knows. So what we're doing, we're using speculation, conjecture, and our opinions. And so, and that's the reality. And I just would like for folks to like try to stay with what's reality. You know, the reality is that you have, you know, a brain, you have thoughts, the ability to create. And there's something that gives you the ability to live on this earth and do those creations. So whatever that is, why don't we be thankful and grateful for it?
Okay, that's fine.
All right.
Anyway,
Yeah. Robert. Yeah. Nice talking to you. Let's pick up from where we left next time, right?
Oh yeah,
Thanks
guys.
for dropping
Peace.
by. Yeah, thanks for dropping by, and talk to you later. And Madin, we have a message from Otangelo as well. He wanted to join, and I said we are just about to close the stream. So Otangelo, yeah, apologies, but do drop by next time and a little early because I hope that we continue our conversation with Robert as well as. What was the name of the other guy? I forgot. He some Judeo-Christian, whatever, right, YouTuber, right? So let's see. Yeah, but a request to Atangelo that if you can, please drop by early. I know there are time difference issues, and so you may not be always, but if you can, then that'll be awesome. With that, I'll request everybody to join our English only channel. That is at the rate, you can see it in the banners that's underneath. It's at the rate Unveiling Faith, and if you're able, please start supporting us and whichever way you can. We have the Patreon link over here, patreon.com/philosapiens, or buy me a coffee link with /philosapiens as well. And you have, you can do YouTube stickers or whatever, right? Super chat stickers, super stickers, or even the memberships. And if you're not able to do that, the best you can do is to spread the word. Share our channel as a wildfire, pretty much, right? Like a wildfire, basically. So with that, thanks to my co-host Mahadan, and see you all in the next stream soon. Bye for now.